just be meeting and greeting somebody and welcoming them, asking them, checking in with them regularly. Don't ever assume that people with autism can't do, because actually a lot of people with autism can offer a lot. Okay? And consider how you can adapt the environment to decrease sensory issues. So decrease noise, dim lighting, find a quiet space. We talked about how a lot of people with autism have heightened sensory issues, heightened smell. I think I described my son can smell things that nobody else can smell. Really strong as well, and you'll wonder what he's talking about, but he'll go into a room and he'll walk out and you'll say, "Why? What's the problem?" It stinks in there. It smells of, and no one else can smell it. Or it might be that the lighting is, to someone with autism is far too bright, to the point that it gives them a headache really quickly. So dimming the lights. And having just a quiet space available where somebody can just retreat to if they need to. So that's just a reminder really. I always like to give that little reminder at the end. This session then, we ran out of time in the last session because I talked too much. And this session is about the SEN Code of Practice. So it's not linked to autism. This is now like a bit of a deep dive into, if you have a child or young person aged 0 to 25 with a special educational need or disability who needs more help than school, nursery or college or whatever the education provider is, who needs more help than what would ordinarily be available to them in school, then this is the approach that you would use. Who's been through this with their children or anyone in the family? Who's been through the SEN assessment process, right? So if you have, you need a medal because it's not easy, is it? It's exceptionally frustrating, even if you're somebody who's worked in special educational needs in schools for a long time. This is going to frustrate the hell out of you, it really is. And it's not gotten any easier. You'll all be aware, I'm sure, of the government's Send Green paper. So that's a paper that's out for consultation, and that's seeking to make some improvements to the quality of support and the assessment timeline for people going through that assessment. Okay. So this presentation I'm giving you now describes what some of the last changes were really. It wasn't that long ago, it was 2014 when the SEND reforms were changed before. And they've not really done what they were designed to do. So we're going to be redesigning that yet again. So that's what this is about, the Code of Practice. So if you've not seen the Code of Practice, this is what all government publications look like from the Department for Education. If you Google SEN Code of Practice, you can download them. So this is the guidance for, it's not just for schools, it's for organisations which work with children and young people in terms of supporting them with their special needs or disabilities. That was January 2015, the last one. They do update it every now and again. It's applicable, it's statutory guidance, so it's legal. It is a legal document. It's worth reminding some people about that. And it's for any organisation. You'll see the logos at the top, the Department for Education and the Department for Health. Okay. One of the cornerstone reforms in 2014 was to ensure that there was legislation to make agencies work together better. So if you're really old like me, you'll remember the old statements of special educational needs, which just outlined what educational provision needed to do for a child. Education, health and care plans outline what everyone, health, education, social care, what everyone should be doing, okay? And that's all written into the plan. And then there's a shortened version, a more user-friendly guide for parents and carers as well. which is, I think, a really, really helpful guide. I often direct my teachers at school just to that, because this is just, an enormous document. This is nicely condensed and in a much simpler format as well. So in the old code of practice, we used to have about 9 different special educational needs categories, and that in the new guidance that was published in 2014 in the reforms, that was reduced just to these 4 areas. So in school or college or nursery, if you're identified with a special educational need at SEN+, meaning that you need more support than the school would normally give to everybody, I'm going to use the word school as a catch-all for all providers of education, okay? So these are the 4 categories: communication and interaction, cognition and learning, social, mental and emotional health, and sensory and or physical. No mention of behaviour there this time. In the last code there was a specific BESD, behaviour, emotional, social development category. This is now all under social, mental and emotional health. So conditions like autism come under communication and interaction, okay? Conditions like dyslexia come under cognition and learning, and conditions like motor coordination difficulties and dyspraxia would come under sensory and or physical. So there's lots of, these are umbrella terms where lots of different special educational needs and disabilities come underneath them, really.
Right, excuse me, I've been told by school that my boy's got to hit have to have a need in every single category to get an EHCP. That's not true, is it?
It's not true at all. No. There are very few people who would hit all of those things. Very few people. It might be that the children, a lot of the children at my school, their primary need, meaning their main need, is autism or ADHD. It's a neurodevelopmental need. But they'll also have secondary needs like learning needs. Sometimes, because they've been misdiagnosed in terms of actually they haven't got a learning need, they've just fallen so far behind because they've not had their needs met in a mainstream school. And once they have those needs met, they catch up very quickly, and the learning needs just disappear.
So you don't have to be...
No, absolutely not.
Right,
No. They have to categorise what their main need is. So they might have several needs across these dimensions, but one need. What's their main need? Everyone has a main need, okay? And you can apply for and get an educational health and care plan with just one area of need.
Right, so if you just add the sensory, or if he's got sensory and the communication and interaction, that's both of his.
Normally, it'll be a diagnosed condition like autism, which fits into one of those categories then. Autism actually would fit under communication and interaction, but it would also come to the sensory and physical as well, depending on the severity of the autism. Some children, people and adults with autism are very disabled, are wheelchair bound, can't walk, can't talk. Most of the children in my school would fit into the communication and interaction. Their disabilities are more hidden, they're invisible disabilities really. But they have massive sensory needs, so they would come under that sensory and physical as well. But you wouldn't hit, it would be very rare for anyone to hit all of those.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay. And the code actually, the guidance in the code says that. It's in black and white, it tells you that. Okay? So there is no longer, there used to be 3 different stages. If your child was on the SEN register at school, they'd either be at School Action or School Action Plus, or they'd have an education, or they'd have what was called then a statement of special educational needs. So it's called, so now that doesn't exist. Okay, it's called the graduated response, and it's just school support now. Okay? So School Action Plus and School Action don't exist anymore. It's just been replaced by a category of SEN support. So anyone who needs SEN support will be on this SEN register as just having SEN support. There's a focus on outcomes, not hours. Or they're supposed to. People still talk about hours, how many hours of support my child can get through an education, health and care plan. So it's still talked about now, and it should be outcomes focused. Meaning that there's a greater, the greater the need, the greater the input they can receive, and so there's more flexibility there. That to me, what do people think is the main barrier to going through this process for any child in any local authority? What's the main barrier? Funding. So when the government did these reforms and they changed this from being more about outcomes and instead of hours, which was the right thing to do, but the reason for that was because hours equals money. You know, you get such and such, it costs such and such to have a learning support assistant per hour. Okay, that was the reason that was done, to try and bring down budgets, and that's still the case now. And the old education, the old statements of special educational needs have been replaced by education, health and care plans, or EHCPs, as it's abbreviated to. So you can see here this. I'm sure a lot of you would have come across assess, plan, do, review.